So let's go into this problem, solve it out in terms of writing up our systems of linear equations and solving for our variables amounts each month. So we said that we're going to solve this problem out 1 month at a time. And we notice that each month is going to have the same set of variables in terms of x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, and that the production information is going to be exactly the same. So this 3, 6, 8, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, those values that we had for matrix A, those are going to be repeated every single time we go from month to month to month. The portion that's going to change is going to be our B matrix. That's talking about the amount of gold that's available, the amount of enameling compound that's available, and the hours of labor that's available for each month. So that means as we go through and we change out those amounts for gold, enameling compound, in this problem the labor stays the same each month, but if it was to change, there it is. We will then have 4 different sets of systems of linear equations to solve. I went ahead and took the liberty of writing them up here. They are given in your book on page 127. And I went ahead and put them into matrix equation form. So here we have the values for March, for April, for May, and for June. Now, if you were using row reduced echelon form to solve out these equations, you'd have to do row reduced echelon form, RREF, 4 times. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. However, since that matrix, that A matrix, is exactly the same every month, once I find the inverse once, then I can just simply multiply it to each of my B matrices and find my variable amounts. So again, this is where it's really useful to have inverse matrices on your side. So our first step is going to be to find that inverse matrix. So we're going to find the inverse of A. Then once we do that, we're going to go ahead and take A and multiply it to the B matrix, meaning the materials that's available and the amount of time that's available for each month. Because that will tell us how many rings, how many pendants, and how many bracelets we can find or we can create each month. Okay, so this is essentially our process of solving for X. And then you're done. Now again, for the sake of time and for our energies here, we are going to find our inverse matrix using our calculator. So in your calculator, I'm going to give ourselves some space here. In your calculator, go ahead and type in that A matrix of 3, 6, 8, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. Because again, that's the one that's going to repeat every single time. Once you figure out what that matrix A is, you'll go ahead and put that into your calculator. Once you've done that, I'd like for you to go ahead and find the inverse matrix on your calculator. This would be a good place to pause the video, get it into your calculator, and then come back to check your answer. All right, so now I've written up what the inverse matrix is. If you've done this correctly with your calculator, you should have -5, 12, 2, 4, -10, -1, and then -1, 3, 0. Something to keep in mind, this is very important, I don't want you to miss this, is that the values that are here in the inverse matrix, they do not correspond with the column and row labels that you had for matrix A. So row or column labels, okay? So I don't want you to think, okay, wait, these numbers are negative and they don't seem to make any sense with, I need negative 5 grams of gold to make a ring and 12 grams of gold to make a pendant. No, that's not how this inverse matrix works, okay? So this is an in-between step. So the units that you would think to associate with A, do not associate them with the inverse. This is almost like the in-between of a baking process. You're not completely finished just yet. The inverse matrix doesn't make sense until you've multiplied it with your B matrix. So that's the reason why it's really important that you go all the way to step 2 and multiply out with your B matrix to then make sense of what you have. Because that's what's going to allow you to solve for X, for the set of X variables. So we're going to take this A inverse and we're going to multiply it to B, so meaning to our available materials and labor, in this case, for each month. So let's see, let's start with March. So I'm going to take March, I'm going to drag it down here. Here we go. Put it right there. And I'm going to take this inverse matrix of A. There we go. Set it right there. And those are going to be the two that are going to multiply for the month of March. So this would be in your calculator where you already have A inverse pulled up. So you'd either go back up to A inverse, and then you can do that function key or your green key and then zoom to then type in this matrix. So type in this B. And once you do, and you have those two multiplied to each other, that will give you the number of rings, pendants, and bracelets that you can make in the month of March. And so let's see, once we put that into our calculator and we multiply up the inverse matrix and this B matrix for March, that gives us 200 rings, gives us 80 pendants, and it gives us 80 bracelets. If you need to take a moment to pause the video to check to make sure you're getting the same thing, go ahead and do so. There we go. Okay, so this would be for the month of March. So for the month of March, you're going to have 200 rings, 80 pendants, 80 bracelets. Now we're going to do the same process again, but instead of doing this for March, we're going to do this for April. So that means I'm going to swap out, move you guys off to the side here, I'm going to swap out that B matrix that I had originally for March. I'm going to swap this guy out and put in April instead. So that means this goes off here, and I'm going to pull this matrix for April. Bring it down to our portion right here. Here we go. Okay, so I use that same inverse, I just swapped out my B. So now I'm talking about April. So this would be the equivalent of going in your calculator, going back up to where you had the A inverse, calling it up, and then changing out that matrix. If you want, you can even go up just the couple of steps and use that same 3x1 matrix that you had from before and just change out those values. When you change out those values, if you want to pause the video, I'm going to write up the answers here. We're going to give you the values for when you're looking at the month of April. All right, and so now we find for the month of April that you're going to have, based on the available materials and time, 20 rings, 80 pendants, and 260 bracelets that you can make. So again, we kept that inverse exactly the same, swapped out that B of available resources and time to then find our new selection or a new answer of rings, pendants, and bracelets. Now you continued this same process of changing out that B set, changing out that B matrix, and inserting a new matrix of B for each subsequent month, or for each subsequent person or family, whatever the case is. So we can do this again for the month of May. I just pulled down the values for May. And when I do, I'm going to find I have 100 rings, 40 pendants, and 240 bracelets. And again, that A stays exactly the same. And you can see how this moves much faster. And then I'll finish off the set by taking out that set for May and doing this all over again for the month of June. So then I'll take my values for the month of June. There it is. And I feel like I'm running out of colors here. For the month of June, I'll do June in green. There we go. Okay, and so for the month of June, I have this new June matrix. Inverse stays exactly the same. I multiply out, and for June, I have 100 rings, 80 pendants, and 180 bracelets. So this is a process that you would go through when you choose at least one of problems 8, 9, and 10 for your homework. The idea is that you want to figure out what variables you're looking for. And once you figure out what your variables are, I'm going to head back up to the top here so we can see where we started. We first identified what our variables were, what we were looking for. Then we took a look at what was required for making up our matrix in terms of what's the equation set that's being given to me, what's the information being given to me. We would of course know our X matrix because it's just taking those X variables. And then your B is going to be based off of the information that's given to you in terms of what the desired outcome is. So again, B is going to be based off of either desired outcome or available materials. But this is going to be the set that's going to change from either person to person, month to month, family to family. This is the one that's going to be changing. And as the B changes, your A matrix stays exactly the same. It stays consistent. Your X matrix stays consistent. And with that change in B, you just use the inverse of A to solve it out for X. So hopefully this video helped make sense of this particular example set. If you would like to go back through and just simply read what they have in the book from pages 126 to 128, you're welcome, of course, to do so. They do go through and row reduce to find the inverse matrix. Again, you don't have to do that. You can just use your calculator. But the big piece is to make sure that you understand how to find your A matrix, set up your X variables, identify those values for your B matrices, and then just rinse and repeat.